Imagine living in a quiet London neighborhood. You pass your neighbors on the stairs. You hear footsteps above your ceiling. Maybe you even nod to the quiet man in flat 23D. Tall, polite, always alone. He waters his plants, walks his dog, keeps to himself. Now imagine this. That same neighbor has dead bodies in his wardrobe. That the smell you've been blaming on the drains is actually the stench of death. For 5 years, no one knew. No one asked. Behind that ordinary face was one of Britain's most terrifying serial killers. A man who didn't just kill his victims, he kept them, bathed them, slept beside them. And when he ran out of room, he flushed them down the toilet. This is the story of Dennis Nilsen, the Muswell Hill murderer, a man who turned loneliness into horror and his flat into a graveyard. Temerity Chapter 1, A Quiet Neighbor. It was a cold February morning in 1983 in the quiet London neighborhood of Muswell Hill. The streets were calm, the birds chirped softly, and most people were just starting their day. But something strange was happening at 23 Cranley Gardens. A plumber had been called. The drains were clogged again, and the tenants were complaining. The smell? Awful, like something dead was stuck inside the pipes. The plumber opened the drain cover outside the building and paused. Inside the pipe were pieces of meat, flesh, bone, something that looked human. He reported it immediately. That night, police came to inspect. When they knocked on the door of the top floor flat, a tall, quiet man opened it. His name? Dennis Nilsen. The police said they needed to ask some questions. Dennis calmly replied, "It's a bit late, isn't it?" Then before they could ask more, he said something that sent a chill down their spines. "It's a long story. You'll want to see the rest. There's a body in the cupboard." And just like that, one of Britain's most disturbing serial killers revealed himself. Not with violence or chaos, but with eerie calm. Chapter 2, A Troubled Childhood. Dennis Andrew Nilsen was born on November 23, 1945 in Fraserburgh, a small fishing town in Scotland. His life began with silence and sadness. His father, a Norwegian soldier, was mostly absent. His mother, a local Scottish woman named Betty, struggled to care for 3 children on her own. Dennis felt invisible, unwanted, but there was one person Dennis loved deeply, his grandfather. The old man took him fishing, told him stories, and gave him the attention he never got from his parents. Then when Dennis was just 6 years old, his grandfather died. No one explained death to Dennis. He was taken to the viewing of the body, where he saw his grandfather lying still in a coffin, cold, lifeless. That image never left him. From that moment, Dennis began to associate love with death. He grew quiet, isolated. He didn't fit in at school. He was different. By his teenage years, he realized he was gay, at a time when being gay in Britain was taboo, even illegal. But Dennis didn't just want love. He wanted control. He wanted someone who wouldn't leave him, someone who wouldn't die. That dark seed, planted in childhood, would grow into something monstrous. Chapter 3, Becoming Dennis Nilsen. As he grew older, Dennis tried to find his place in the world. At 16, he joined the army. He became a cook, serving in Germany and the Middle East. He was neat, organized, and good at following rules. But even in uniform, he felt alone. He kept his sexuality hidden. He drank heavily. He fantasized. His fantasies weren't about passion or romance. They were about stillness, control. Having a man completely to himself, motionless, silent, unable to leave. After the army, Dennis worked as a police officer in London, then later at a job center. He lived a quiet life, normal even, but deep inside something was boiling. At night, Dennis would walk the streets, visiting pubs and gay bars. He often brought young men home, sometimes just for company, sometimes for more. And one night, something inside him snapped. Chapter 4, The First Kill. It was December 29th, 1978. Dennis Nilsen was living at 195 Melrose Avenue in the Cricklewood area of North London. That night, he met a young man at a pub. His name was Stephen Holmes, just 14 years old, lost, vulnerable. Dennis brought him home. They drank, talked. Eventually, Stephen fell asleep in Dennis's bed. Dennis watched him sleep, and as the morning light crept in, Dennis panicked. He didn't want Stephen to leave. He didn't want to be alone again. So he grabbed a necktie and strangled him. After the boy was dead, Dennis sat beside him, bathed him, talked to him. He kept the body in his flat for days, sometimes under the floorboards, sometimes in bed beside him. He didn't feel horror. He felt peace. Dennis later said, "I couldn't bear to let him go." This was just the beginning. Chapter 5. Routine of Death. Over the next 5 years, Dennis Nilsen would murder at least 15 young men. He had a pattern. He would visit pubs, bus stops, or just walk around London looking for young men. Many were homeless, struggling, or simply passing through the city. Some were gay, others weren't. He would invite them home for a drink, a meal, or a place to sleep. Then when they were relaxed or asleep, he would kill them. He strangled most of his victims. Some he drowned in the bathtub. Then he'd bathe the bodies, dress them, keep them in his flat for days, even weeks. Sometimes he would talk to them, sleep beside them, or sit with them as if they were still alive. He took photos, made drawings, recorded his thoughts in journals. It wasn't about blood or gore, it was about keeping them. Dennis didn't want people to leave. He wanted them forever. But as the bodies piled up, he faced a new problem. Where would he hide them? Chapter 6. Two Faces of a Monster. To the outside world, Dennis Nilsen was polite, soft-spoken. He worked at a job center. He wore a tie. He greeted neighbors. Nobody suspected a thing. But inside his flat, it was a house of death. He hid bodies under the floorboards, in closets, or even inside suitcases. When the smell became unbearable, he burned the remains in his backyard. Once, he dug a hole and made a fire pit. He threw in bones, clothes, even heads, and watched them burn. Sometimes neighbors complained about the smell, but Dennis always had an excuse. He had a dog. He was cooking. He spilled something. And because he seemed so ordinary, so calm, no one looked further. He lived this double life for years, until he moved, and everything fell apart. Chapter 7. The Flat That Smelled of Death. In 1981, Dennis moved to a new apartment, 23 Cranley Gardens in Muswell Hill. Unlike his old place, this new flat had no backyard, no floorboards, no space to hide bodies. But Dennis kept killing. When he ran out of hiding spots, he began cutting up the bodies and flushing the pieces down the toilet or storing them in bags. He hoped no one would notice, but the pipes did. By early 1983, other tenants were complaining about clogged drains and bad smells. A plumber came to check. That's when he found bones, flesh, organs. The police were called, and Dennis Nilsen's dark secret was about to be exposed. Chapter 8. Discovery in the Drains. The discovery happened on February 8, 1983. The plumber, Michael Catron, had pulled strange pieces of meat from the drain outside 23 Cranley Gardens. Something didn't feel right. He kept one piece and reported it to his boss. That night, he returned with a police officer. They examined the remains more closely. One piece looked exactly like a human knuckle. Another looked like skin with hair. Human hair. There was no doubt anymore. They climbed the stairs to flat 23D. Dennis Nilsen opened the door. He was calm, too calm. The officer told him they were investigating some human remains found in the drain. Dennis didn't fight. He didn't try to run. Instead, he simply nodded and said, "What you're looking for is in the cupboard." Inside the wardrobe was a black plastic bag. When the officers opened it, they found a severed head and 2 arms. Dennis looked at them and said, "It's a long story. I'll tell you everything." Chapter 9. The Interrogation. At the police station, Dennis Nilsen spoke for hours. He didn't hide anything. He confessed to killing 15 or 16 men. He wasn't even sure of the exact number. He told the detectives everything: how he met his victims, how he killed them, how he kept the bodies. The detectives were shocked. He showed no emotion, no remorse. It was as if he was telling a story that didn't belong to him. He even drew maps of his old apartment and explained where he hid the bodies. He described how he sat with the corpses, watched TV beside them, and talked to them. He said the killings gave him a sense of comfort. He hated being alone. But even after so many confessions, police still had a problem. They couldn't find all the victims. Some had been burned, others had been flushed away. There were no names, no missing person reports. Many of the victims were homeless, runaways, or young men without families. In the end, police could only confirm 6 identities. Dennis Nilsen's memory was all they had. Chapter 10. Trial and Sentencing. Dennis Nilsen's trial began on October 24, 1983, at the Old Bailey in London. The courtroom was packed. The public was horrified. Britain had never seen a killer quite like him. He was charged with 6 counts of murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. Nilsen pleaded not guilty to murder, claiming diminished responsibility. He said he wasn't in control, that he had mental problems. But the jury didn't believe him. The details were too clear, his memory too perfect. In the end, the jury agreed. Dennis Nilsen knew exactly what he was doing. Chapter 11. Behind Prison Walls. Dennis Nilsen spent the rest of his life in prison. He was moved from one high-security prison to another, Wormwood Scrubs, Full Sutton, then finally HMP Full Sutton in Yorkshire. Even in prison, he was strange. He wrote long letters, made complaints about prison food, and spent years writing his memoirs, though the government never allowed them to be published. He also continued to draw, write poetry, and talk about his crimes with chilling calmness. He never expressed real remorse. He called himself the murder machine and referred to his crimes as a kind of twisted art. In 2001, he was attacked by another inmate with a razor blade, left with deep cuts on his face. Still, he lived until old age. On May 12, 2018, Dennis Nilsen died in prison at age 72. The cause, a ruptured abdominal aortic aneurysm. He had been left in pain for hours before receiving medical help. He died the way he lived, isolated, cold, and surrounded by silence. His body was cremated, his ashes scattered in secret. If you found this documentary informative, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with others who enjoy deep dives into true crime cases. What case should we cover next? Let us know in the comments. Until then, stay safe and always keep your eyes open.